Have you ever been in that situation where you are implementing Scrum, Agile, all these different techniques, and you're still not getting the gains that you're trying to get? A lot of times it's because you're not improving your engineering practices. Today, we're going to cover a big topic, DevOps, simple DevOps primer. Going to be so good that you may have to slap your mom on it. DevOps, or what I'm going to call, software development plus IT operations. The dev, software development, the operations, IT ops, right? It's almost like you can say it's the perfect blend between the two, is what DevOps is all about. And what DevOps really emphasizes, probably more than anything else, is automation, collaboration, communication, obviously between developers, operations, stakeholders, and understand. I'm using I'm using developers in a very generic term. I'm not thinking about as the developer as only writing code, but I'm thinking about a developer that's going beyond just writing code. Testing is a major part of DevOps. So you it's one of those things you want to think about and consider it, because the idea is that even if we involve, well, stakeholders, you want to involve them too to some degree. But what we're really doing is trying to create the highest possible quality software as quickly and as efficiently as possible. That's pretty much what we're doing with DevOps. So you can always think about it in short as the perfect blend between software development and IT ops. You can think about it as being all about automation, collaboration, communication. You can think about our main purpose as being producing high quality software that is quickly done and efficiently done, right? These are very, very important things. So then, if I take it back and I peel it back for just a second, you say to yourself, what is DevOps in particular? Um, some people may consider it a methodology, may consider it I would never do that. I was considered to be a framework, but a lot of people like to think of it as a methodology associated with software. But I always think of these things as like a framework, because you can switch specifics in and out based on your situation, based on how things are going for you. And when you just peel it back, you can think about DevOps as being the integration of software development, IT operations, and I'm going to add one more thing to that. I'm going to add one more thing to that, right? And that thing I'm going to add is quality assurance. Quality assurance, right? That whole testing part, that whole making sure that we have the quality that we're expecting, because we are creating a culture where there's going to be a lot of collaboration happening between developers. Understand, when I say developers, I'm including testing and quality in that, right? When you start thinking about operations as well as, stakeholders, people that have some interest in whatever's happening here, right? So realistically, when you peel it back, DevOps is really major collaboration. It really is major collaboration and communication. Is that more than anything else? You're going to find transparency, inspection, adaptation all over DevOps, right? It's just DevOps you shouldn't feel like it's a daunting thing. You shouldn't feel like it's such a big thing that you can't get yourself involved and engaged in some kind of way, because DevOps does touch on several things, right? It really does touch on several things, but you got to just make sure that you understand that at its core, you're really trying to have high quality development, right? Operations and quality assurance. All three of those are extremely important. So then when you peel it back a little bit, you say to yourself, all right, what kind of tools do we actually utilize in terms of DevOps? But before I ask that question, before I really answer that question, here's a question for you. For the people that are here, right? Whether you're on LinkedIn or you're on YouTube, are you actually utilizing DevOps within the organization that you're working with? Have you had any exposure to DevOps at this point? When I see, look, I understand Scrum, right? Yeah, I get it. No, no, no. I'm not talking about Scrum here. I'm not talking about Kanban. I'm really talking about DevOps, right? Purely DevOps, right? Now, if you may have had some exposure to Extreme Program, which a lot of its foundations lead into DevOps, right? But when I think about DevOps, I think about a cultural change. I think about a culture that is embracing collaboration. Does that make sense? So if you have exposure or experience with DevOps, just do me a favor, just throw in there how many years of exposure experience you have with DevOps. The problem that I run into is a lot of Scrum Master process folks types, they don't really work that closely with the developers where they have a clear enough understanding of what's happened within development and operations for them to help them improve. So let me know. Throw it in the chat. How much experience? If it's zero, that's okay. There's no shame here. But let me know how much experience you have with it. I'm a past software developer, right? So I still got that software development thought process, right, in my head, right? And it's just a part of my muscle memory. Some things I can't help but think about. So just want to make sure you understand that. Now, some tools, you may be familiar with, but I'm going to ask you all another question. I see people have experience, right? Evelyn says it's 3 years. Lashante says minimum exposure, and minimum exposure is fine, right? It can happen by a separate group or whatever it is, but understanding it is a plus, right? Look at Patrick, the master here, with 1,000 years of DevOps experience. Patrick was doing DevOps before computers existed, right? So this is a good thing. I love him. You know what I'm saying? So, and Evelyn says about 3 years. So we got mixed amount of experience in here, right? So then I'll ask another question since some of you all do have experience with this, right? Um, what what type of tools do you see utilized within DevOps? Okay. What type of tools do you actually see? We talked about what DevOps is, right? But what type of tools do you actually see within DevOps? Because it's one thing to talk about; it's another thing to start actioning these things, right? And if you have an idea of some of these tools, just throw them in the chat for me. Just throw them in the chat for me, right? Because I'm familiar with a few. I wouldn't say I'm familiar with all of them. And let's say that most application lifecycle tools probably have some version of this. If you go into Azure or you go into IBM suite of tools, you're probably going to see that, right? And so, as I see here, I see things come up like Jenkins, GitHub, software versioning, team collaboration tools. Absolutely. These are some of the things that I would expect to hear about, right? But if I was to categorize tools, I would say that you're going to have a CI/CD tools. Oh, let me stop. Continuous integration, continuous delivery. CI, continuous integration. CD, continuous delivery, right? So when I start thinking about Jenkins, that would be a perfect example of a CI/CD tool, right? There are other ones that exist, Circle CI, Travis CI. So you have the idea of that, right? You also need a configuration management tool, right? Things like Puppet would be a good example of that, right? And if you have no clue what I'm talking about, you need to just start looking it up, right? Infrastructure as code, IAC tools, Terraform, OpenStack would be other ideas. And then another thing would be like containerization tools, right? So Docker or, you know, this other one forgets me. Starts with a K, but I can't remember it. Cuba or something, whatever, right? But the idea is that you really have, four common tools, and I won't say tools, four categories of tools: CI/CD tools, configuration management tools. You're also going to be thinking about the infrastructure as code tools and the containerization tools. All these are just tools that's right, right. That's it right there. Let me throw it up. Petra, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That's exactly it. So just one of those things where you want to just kind of pull back. They're great examples, right? They're great examples of all these things, right? But whatever those tools are, you should be getting some familiarization with them if you don't have any tools whatsoever. You should get some exposure to them for yourself, right? And if you do, trust me, it's going to be really helpful for you. It's going to be extremely helpful for you, right? So I absolutely love that. I love even thinking about it because the tools will help you to action it, right? And there are always new tools popping up, right? So it is one of those things that if you're not an expert at it, it's okay. It's okay. It happens. It happens. It is what it is, right? So tools is one thing. So what are those tools? We took care of that, right? So what about processes associated with DevOps, right? Because there's obviously things that you're trying to do, right? And you got to get a clear understanding of some of those things that you're trying to do. And I can break those down into a few categories as well, which are important too. Um, and these are really there to improve collaboration when it comes to development and operations teams. That's what I'm talking about. Those processes that exist between them is really what I'm kind of touching on right now. So this would be, just a few things to touch on, right? But again, I'm giving broad categories here, right? Obviously, you're gonna need do some continuous integration. If you don't know what that is, that's integrating code. Obviously, that's kind of what it means. You go back and you think continuous deployment, right? Being able to integrate that code into production automatically, right? Continuous testing, ways to ensure high quality, hopefully as automated as you can. And then another thing is going to be continuous monitoring, right? Making sure that things isn't going crazy in your production environment, right? And so you peel it back, you got to deal with that as well. And so these are just processes that are really associated with your actual DevOps, and your tools are going to support those processes of what you're trying to do in terms of the integration of software, operations, and quality, right? So this is all really, really important for us to shake up and shake out. So really, really super important. For some reason, I don't understand why. I'm not seeing my LinkedIn post, and a lot of you all aren't seeing them. I'm not able to show them for some strange reason because they're just not popping up. But here's the deal. I see Rajesh has given many, many things, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, kind of grab a couple of these things that Rajesh says over, um, over on LinkedIn, right? Just grab a couple of them and I don't throw them in, but this is from Rajesh, not from me. Some of the things that you all might want to be more familiar with, right? SCM tools, right? So thank you, Rajesh, for that. Rajesh, right? Kumar, right? We talked about some continuous integration stuff here. So I'm just throwing them over here because I want to make sure that everybody can see them and I can display them more than anything else. This is another idea from Rajesh. We're thinking very similar, Rajesh. We really are. CM tools, yeah. Excellent, in terms of this. Yep, right there. That's another set. So let me display that there. Configuration management tools, the CM tools are excellent. Let's see, just to add more stuff into this. Rajesh, you didn't came up with everything, man. I should have just brought you on a show, my friend. Seriously. Uh, take that a little bit deeper. You got containerization tools, which I mentioned, Docker. Let's see, we got monitoring tools, right? So there's lots of stuff, right? So I'm just dropping these things because, again, these are things that have been added to the comments over in LinkedIn, and I do want to display them. And again, they're from Rajiv Kumar, right? Let's see, monitoring and logging tools, collaboration tools. Yeah, just lots of tools, man. I mean, this space has grown so much since I began in it, and it's just unbelievable. It's just really unbelievable. And so let's see, let's click see more on that. And there we go. And we're going to add this too. Okay, so thank you, Rajiv. I really appreciate that. And you're third connected to me or something like that, man. You need to be a first connected to me, man. Make sure that you connect with me. Okay, seriously. So let me click like on all these comments from him. Okay, but excellent. I totally agree with all these things that Rajesh has said. So once again, lots of great stuff here. But again, DevOps is big, 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 right? And if you're not doing it, this is going to be a problem for you, right? Because you can't really speed up a lot of things without improving your technical agility. If you don't improve your technical agility, then you just mess up everything. That's just the fact, right? So just so that you think it's not good enough to think I'm gonna walk in the building and all we're gonna do is Scrum. I'm gonna walk in the building and all we're gonna do is Kanban, right? By the way, if you like what we're talking about here, I want you to go ahead and make sure you subscribe to the channel, like, like it, because again, this is going to help with the algorithm. And for you all that's on LinkedIn, come join me on YouTube, man. Come join me on YouTube and subscribe and like. Make sure you do that, and make sure I'll leave a link to make sure y'all come on over. So make sure you come over to YouTube, because that's where I operate the show at, for real, for real. So come on, join us over there too, right? So let me make sure I get this for them, so we can all be good to go and at some point be in the same place, at one time. So let me drop this over there for my LinkedIn folks. So again, you like this, like and subscribe. But come on over here, my LinkedIn folks. Come on over and subscribe. But yeah, this is a lot of good information. It's a lot of good information just kind of piled on you, right? I said this is going to be a good one, and I think it's really, really good. The only last thing that I would add to this is one final thing that I think is really important, but again, people don't think about it, and that's the culture change that goes along with DevOps. It's going to be a culture change, right? I mean, all the time we say it's going to be a culture change, and probably one of the biggest culture changes. Well, I'll ask you all this before I know what my biggest one is, right? What's the biggest culture change do you think that we have to deal with in terms of this whole process of kind of incorporating DevOps? I'm not going to say we're moving to it, incorporating DevOps into what we're doing, right? To have the highest quality that we can have. What do you think are some of the cultural changes that actually happen? Okay, drop that in the chat for me, right? And I'm gonna say, yeah, we covered a lot here. That's the reason why I say it's a primer. This is going to be a good video, right? Rajesh helped out, definitely covered a lot of things, added a lot more than I was even thinking, right? Um, Sometimes just familiarizing yourself with them is okay. Most shops use 2 to 5 of these tools. Yeah, absolutely. And we'll have learned you'll learn them for real. So most shops do have these tools in house. So just know that as well. And Petrus jumps out there first and said mindset change. I agree with you. There's definitely a mindset change that goes along with this, right? The mindset change is extremely important because a lot of folks got to change how they're thinking, change how they're developing, change how they're working, right? Probably the biggest one, in my mind. Um, I get Rajesh saying collaboration. I'm going to add that here. I think that's a major one, right? Collaboration is huge, right? I'm adding this. This is from Rajesh. I'll share it, but it's from Rajesh over on LinkedIn. Again, I don't know why it's not showing on my in my software here. But on LinkedIn, seriously, collaboration is a major one, right? So I definitely think collaboration. I definitely think automation. Rajesh with another good one, automation. Um, and definitely, let me add that one from Rajesh. Automation. That's definitely another big one. And then eliminating silos, definitely. But here's the one that I don't see that you all are saying that I think is important is shared responsibility. There's a huge, huge thing with shared responsibility. Like, it's huge shared responsibility. I would think would be the number one thing that I would think about in terms of DevOps, right? And also continuous improvement, right? I saw collaboration, I saw automation, all those things are good. Rajesh just said shared responsibility. So shared responsibility is a major one. And Rajesh added another one, customer focus. I absolutely love it. These are just things that, again, shared responsibility. Also, Rajesh jumped out there with, customer focus, right? So I think all these things are extremely important when it comes to DevOps, right? When it comes to DevOps. So if you're around and you're not thinking about these things in terms of DevOps, I'm going to ask everybody, right? What's some good books to read, right? I always go back to the basics of making sure you understand extreme programming. That's for sure. Kent Beck's books, it's tons of them, right? Several books, right? And then if you look at people like Bob Martin, um, you go ahead and make sure you think about um, other things that's associated in the space. You can learn a lot. Continuous deployment, the continuous delivery by J.S. Humble is probably one of the major seminal books that's been out there for a while. And there are just many, many books. So realistically, I'm going to say to you, if you're not familiar with the things that we talked about, make sure you become familiar with it. Um, shared responsibility. Bridget kind of said on LinkedIn, shared responsibility is interesting, right? This is exactly what she said. And it is interesting, but it really is. When you talk about DevOps, it really is a huge shared responsibility. There has to be a high level of trust in these kind of environments, because if you don't have that, it's really hard to spread that responsibility across to several members of the team. So it's a big commitment, is what it is what is just the truth. It's interesting, but it's just the truth, right? And that's how it works in many organizations that do this well, do this very well. Okay. So really, really, really important, right? Um, One book that's been recommended, I'm going to throw this out here by uh, Rajesh, is a couple books. Let's see. I'm just going to grab a couple of them that he threw out there. I'm always gonna. I know Jez Humble. I love his book, Continuous Delivery. But this book right here, Site Reliability and Engineering: How Google Runs Production Systems. That's an amazing book. I've read this book. This right here is a really, really good book, right? Let's see. Let's add a little bit more here. Let's see. Effective building, effective DevOps, right? Another one. Um, Again, people are throwing out great, books out here. Rajesh has given me three of them, so this is good. So I like it. I love it. Um, you don't see these things too often, but if you are interested, go learn about it. The DevOps Handbook, that's another great book, right? You see Jazz Humble out there, right? So that the DevOps book here is a really good book too. A lot of great examples in that book is what I would say to you, right? So that being said, that's what this whole thing is about in terms of DevOps, right? Um, you know, I just wanted to give you a primer. That's it.